You know, have you ever stopped to wonder why you might happily pay $5 for a cup of coffee while someone else wouldn't even drink it for free? Do two individuals always derive equal satisfaction from consuming the exact same product? It's a fascinating question, and it really sits at the very heart of the core mystery of human preference.
Welcome to this explainer. I am so excited to have you here today because we're going to demystify the mathematical patterns behind our everyday buying habits. We are diving deep into cardinal utility analysis. Whether you realize it or not, every single time you walk into a store, you're performing this complex mental calculus. Today, we're going to make that invisible math visible.
Here is our roadmap for this session. We'll start with the economics of choice, then explore the concept of utility, move on to measuring satisfaction with utils, dive into total and marginal utility, and finally wrap up with finding consumer equilibrium.
All right, Section 1, the economics of choice, how we prefer one good to another.
So, consumer theory is, well, it's essentially detective work. We obviously can't directly measure what's happening inside someone's brain, right? So we infer what they like based on the bundles of goods in their shopping cart. Consumers are just constantly comparing different bundles. According to our source material, you basically do one of two things. You either decide one bundle is strictly better than the other, meaning it's strictly preferred, or you decide you're completely indifferent between the two. If you always choose bundle X when bundle Y is available, economists confidently say you strictly prefer X. But if you'd be just as satisfied with either, you're indifferent. It's literally the absolute foundation of all consumer behavior.
Moving right along to Section 2, the concept of utility, power to satisfy human wants.
Utility is basically the pleasure or satisfaction you derive from consuming a good or service. But, and this is a really crucial point, we have to clearly separate usefulness from utility. They're absolutely not the same thing. Think about a beautifully painted Picasso canvas. It might be completely useless functionally, right? You can't eat it, it won't keep you warm, and you certainly can't drive it to work. But it offers massive, immeasurable utility to an art lover. Usefulness is all about the product's practical function, while utility is entirely about your subjective satisfaction as a consumer.
And because it's so subjective, utility varies wildly from person to person. Our source material uses a really great example here. Cigarettes. They offer literally zero utility to a non-smoker, but massive utility to a smoker. Furthermore, utility changes based on time and place. Think about it. The utility you get from a hot cup of coffee early in the morning is incredibly high, right? But the utility of that exact same cup of coffee during a sweltering hot lunch? Probably much, much lower. Your satisfaction is essentially a moving target.
Which brings us to Section 3, measuring satisfaction with utils, cardinal versus ordinal approaches.
So how in the world do we actually measure this invisible, constantly moving target of satisfaction? Well, historically, economists fall into two main camps. The ordinal utility approach argues that we can't use exact numbers at all. We can only rank things. For example, simply saying, I prefer apples to oranges. But the main focus of this explainer is the other camp, cardinal utility. The cardinalists boldly claim that yes, utility can absolutely be objectively measured with arbitrary numerical units. They measure this satisfaction using a theoretical unit called utils. It's kind of like, imagine an invisible scoreboard hovering right over your head. Let's say a consumer named Billin eats an orange. Her scoreboard might instantly light up with 10 utils. If she eats a banana, it might light up with 8 utils. Thanks to cardinal utility, we don't just know that Billin prefers oranges, we know exactly how much more she prefers them.
Now, for all this math to perfectly work out, economists have to lay down a few ground rules or assumptions. First up, we have to assume consumers are totally rational, meaning you always want to maximize your happiness given your budget. We assume utility is indeed measurable in these utils. We also assume the value of a dollar, or the marginal utility of money, stays completely constant for the consumer over the period we're analyzing. We assume that total utility depends entirely on the quantity of goods you consume. And finally, we assume something called diminishing marginal utility, which is so incredibly important that it needs its very own section.
All right, let's jump into Section 4, total and marginal utility, the limits of satisfaction.
Let's see what actually happens when we consume more and more of a specific good in a single sitting. To figure this out, we need to understand marginal utility, or MU. Total utility is your overall satisfaction. Marginal utility, on the other hand, is the extra satisfaction you realize from consuming just one more unit of a product. It's the change in your total utility.
Let's relate this directly to your own life. Just imagine you are absolutely starving, and you eat an orange. That first orange, it tastes like heaven. It gives you a massive amount of utility. But what about the second orange? Still good, sure, but not quite as amazing as the first. By the time you get to your fourth or fifth orange, you might actually be feeling a little sick. This right here is the law of diminishing marginal utility. As you consume more of a commodity in a given time, the extra satisfaction you get from each successive unit drops.
We can actually see this diminishing utility in action if we look at the raw data. Notice that total utility column, it rises steadily, 10, 18, 24, 28, hitting a maximum of 30 when our consumer eats 5 or 6 units. But look at the marginal utility column right next to it. It starts at a solid 10 for that first unit, and then it just continuously drops, 8, 6, 4, 2, 0. By the time they force down that 7th unit, the marginal utility is actually -2. That extra unit is literally making them worse off, dropping their total utility back down to 28.
And when we plot those exact numbers, we get this incredible aha moment. Watch the top curve, the total utility. It goes up like a hill and reaches its absolute peak at exactly 6 units. Now look directly below that at the marginal utility line. Right where total utility hits its peak, marginal utility hits exactly 0 on the axis. This proves mathematically that you have maximized your satisfaction the exact moment that one additional unit offers you 0 extra benefit.
This leads us perfectly into Section 5, Finding Consumer Equilibrium, Maximizing Utility on a Budget.
In the real world, unfortunately, we don't have infinite money to just keep buying until our marginal utility hits 0, right? So if we look at a single commodity on a fixed budget, this graph shows us exactly what a rational consumer should do. You have a downward sloping marginal utility curve and a flat line representing the fixed market price of the good. The absolute sweet spot here is point C. At point C, the marginal utility of the good perfectly equals its price. Above point C, the extra satisfaction is higher than the price, so you should absolutely keep buying. Below point C, the item costs more than the satisfaction it brings, so you should definitely stop. Point C is consumer equilibrium. But real life usually involves choosing between lots of different goods. Let's look at a two-commodity scenario using a hypothetical consumer from our text named Saron. Saron wants to maximize her happiness, but she only has a limited income of 7 beer. She's choosing between bananas, which cost 1 beer each, and bread, which costs 4 beer a loaf. To win this economic game, she needs to find the exact combination where the marginal utility per money spent is equal for both goods, and her entire 7 beer budget is spent.
To actually solve this, Saron can't just compare marginal utility directly, simply because the bread is 4 times more expensive than the banana. That wouldn't be a fair fight. She has to calculate marginal utility divided by the price, those MU over P columns you see in the data. This tells her exactly how much bang for her buck she gets from every single beer spent on either item.
The absolute secret to unlocking perfect consumer equilibrium lies right in this formula. Saron achieves perfect equilibrium when the marginal utility of good X divided by its price perfectly equals the marginal utility of good Y divided by its price. Looking back at her data, she finds this exact balance when she buys 3 bananas and 1 loaf of bread. For both of those choices, her MU divided by price equals exactly 3. And check this out. 3 bananas at 1 beer plus 1 bread at 4 beer perfectly exhausts her total income of 7 beer. She has mathematically optimized her happiness.
The truly incredible thing about cardinal utility analysis is that you are acting exactly like Saron every single day. Your brain is constantly calculating prices behind the scenes, measuring subjective utils, and factoring in diminishing marginal utility to maximize your budget. So I'm going to leave you with this to ponder. The very next time you're standing in line to buy a coffee, a new gadget, or just a quick snack, try to pause for a second. Ask yourself, how many utils are you really getting from this next purchase? And based on the math, is it truly worth the price? Keep analyzing your choices, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.